Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Mind, Body, and Roots. I have Dr. Sunny Pahouja, who runs the Dental Investment Group, owns a practice in Cincinnati, Ohio, and does a bunch of other things. So I will let him introduce himself, talk about what he likes to do in his free time, where he came from, and just really get started on his story. So thank you for being here, Sunny.
Yeah, thanks, Ahad. Thanks for having me. It's always nice talking with you. I feel like I've been following your journey for the last couple of years, from just being a dental student to a practicing dentist now. It's kind of cool to see how far you've come along, and to talk about where you're working, and it's just inspiring because when you get out of dental school, it requires a lot of hustle and hard work to get to some of these steps, and you're doing all the right things. But with that in mind, yeah, my name is Sunny. I've been a practicing dentist, hard to say, but almost 15 years now. So yeah, I graduated in 2011.
Yeah.
I was actually an undergrad. I was a finance and real estate major. I think it was probably my third. Yeah, it was my third year when I decided that I was going to do something in science, and I think somehow I started shadowing a couple dentists and started talking to a couple dental students, and just decided that okay, this makes a lot of sense. It truly allows you to be a business owner, allows you to apply that business out of dentistry and be a dentist. And that was kind of some of the tidbits that I got from the people that I was shadowing. So I started taking more and more prereqs and applied to dental school, got into Ohio State. Yeah, so and that was back in 2007. So yeah, 2007, 2011, 4 years of dental school. I did not do any kind of residency. I went straight into a practice right after that, and it was a good experience. It was actually a great experience. I did a bunch of pediatrics, and one of the reasons I chose that practice was because I was thinking about doing pediatrics, and I thought this would be cool to get some experience and see if I really like it, and then I'll go back and do a pediatric residency. But I'm glad in some ways that I didn't, because I did enjoy working with kids a lot. But I
Hmm.
think long term option, I also enjoyed working with adults. So I'm like, I think I really want, in my opinion, the best of both worlds: be able to see kids and be able to see adults, and just really try to work on having the best of both worlds. So yeah, I practiced as an associate for about 3.5 years, and purchased this practice, and now it's been 11 years since I've owned this practice. So it's kind of crazy how fast time flies, but you also remember a lot of the struggles to get there, all those milestones, all those changes that take place in your life and in your practice and your workplace and that kind of stuff. So it's kind of cool to see all of that stuff that happens. There are times when I'm like, man, I wouldn't change the way I did things, and there are definitely times when I'm just like, man, there are some regrets, and I wish I would have done things this or that way. So yeah, I feel like there's a lot I can talk about, but I know we only have an hour, so we'll pick up on some of that stuff.
Perfect. So, Sunny, speaking about regrets, what is your biggest one? Well, actually, what are your biggest two? Because one is always tricky when you bought your practice. And what would you have changed if you were to do it again?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest ones is really from like early on. And I hate to say this in some ways, because when you are a new practice owner, you're going through a lot of emotions of how to get your practice busy. You're trying to figure out, like, how do I make sure my patients are getting the best experience, and how my staff's getting the best experience. So you're investing a lot in yourself. You're doing all that you can to make that happen. I think the downside of that is that there are only 24 hours in a day, and you can only do so much. So looking back at it, I think I worked hard, very hard for a long time. I think probably up until COVID, I felt like those first 5 years were just like hustle, go, go, go. And if I had to stay at work for an extra 2 hours when the practice closed, patients left, staff left, I did that. And I feel like in many ways, the positive was that it got me to a point where I have good systems in place, where I have that success of good patient retention and high production, all that kind of stuff that you people think as success metrics. But the downside is that there are only 24 hours in a day, which means you're taking that time away from your family, you're taking that time away from home, your spouse. And I think that's kind of where things get tricky, because in some ways I'm like, you know what? If I hadn't done some of that stuff, would I still be here? Maybe. I think in some ways I'm like, I wish I had just turned off that part of that brain where when you're done with work, when you're done with seeing patients, when you're done with the staff, when you're done with that practice, you leave that there, and then you turn on, this other part of your brain that is solely focused on your home life, solely focused on your family, solely focused on when you're out with friends, when you're out with family, like you're not worried about the practice, you're just focused on being there for them. And I think that was the part that I struggled with, and I still do at times. But I really made a point about prioritizing that, where if, let's take tomorrow for example, a lot of us got a whole bunch of snow. The old me would be worried about production. Old me would be worried about, like, what are we going to tell patients? We're going to lose so much in production, blah blah blah. Now in my mind I had already made a decision, probably, by Friday, if these projections hold the way they're talking about with the snow, we're gonna end up closing on Monday, and it is what it is. Like, I'm gonna take that day and actually enjoy the day, get some work done that I've been wanting to get done at the house, and
Mhm.
actually really just enjoy my day and not even worry about work. Like, and I think the old me would have been, oh man, how are we gonna make up this production? Are we going to add extra hours at the end of the week, or are we going to maybe add a Friday to make up for some of that stuff? And then you realize in life you only have so much time, and you truly are in control of how you make those choices, how you handle those hard times. And I think that those are the things that I've learned personally, and I'll share that with you in a little bit about the why behind it. But I feel like in life, when you go through those experiences, when you go through those times, you learn a lot about yourself, and you try to figure out, am I doing things the right way? Sometimes things, feel good and right in that moment, but then you have to take a step back and kind of reevaluate the things that you've done in the past, the things that you're going to do in the future. Are you going to follow that past, or are you going to make some changes and live your life differently in the present, live your life differently in the future?
That makes sense. That actually is like very useful, I think, frame, because I think there was a couple conversations that I saw online that people were talking about, like the owner mindset and the associate mindset. And I was even like thinking, I mean, maybe this would be something cool. Maybe we could coin it as a term, but like having that associate owner mindset, like be an owner when you're in the office or when you're about to step into the office. And obviously, like when things like snow days or things happen, keep that. But the moment you walk out the office, and this is probably one of the hardest things you could do, but just shut your mind off. Be like, okay, I did my job, just like an associate does, and still be a leader, still make those decisions you have to make every day. But at the end of the day, it's a business. And it'll still run. Like, it's not gonna die like 1 day or 2 days or a whole week. Like, it really doesn't matter, because people, if they like you and they have the insurance, if you're insurance driven or even fee for service, whatever, they'll come back. I mean, I'm not an owner, I'm an associate, so I have more of that associate mindset, but that's something that I kind of would like to take into any type of ownership role. It's like, I just don't see the point, the urgency anymore. I mean, money's great and, it's a tool, but it's not much more than that. Family and friends and, kids, that's more important, I think. And I think I've been very blessed to see that early on in my career, because I feel like I was that same way that you're describing, and like this transition to Missouri has kind of like changed that. So whatever my next step is, I'm hoping that I can develop like this associate owner mindset. It's like, cool, I got to make all these decisions, but at the end of the day, it'll still be there.
Yeah. And every day you're faced with challenges of making decisions. Every day you have to make a choice about how you treat your patients, how you treat your staff, how you treat your kids and spouse and all that kind of stuff. And I think the number one thing is that once you're done making that decision, you it's hard to go back. And once you leave the practice at 5 o'clock to 6 o'clock, like, there are things that you just can't do. There are things that are gonna have to wait till the next day, but it also is pointless to keep thinking about it. And I think in our minds, like, it's been drilled into our heads that, being a practice owner it's hard. Being a practice owner is nonstop, and you're really thinking about the practice 24/7. And there's no denying that. I mean, there are situations, like, I'll give you an example right now. If I have the guy that basically he does our landscaping, he does all the snow management, all that kind of stuff. He texted me earlier and said, his snowplow is not working properly. I may need to find someone else to just make sure that my office is ready for work on Tuesday and that kind of stuff. So he wanted to give me a heads up, and there are things I'm like, I'm not going to go out there and clean the parking lot. It's a big parking lot. I don't have all the tools, so I'm going to go ahead and just text some people and see who can give me some contacts and go from there. And I think there are things that sometimes are just beyond your control, but then by having proper channels of communication, by having some of that stuff, you're able to find the right answers, and you just try to make it happen. But I think in some ways we're just so accustomed to stress. We're so accustomed to thinking about these things nonstop. I don't know if it really gets us anywhere, because you can think all you want, but unless there is a viable solution, or sometimes there are no solutions, then there's not much you can do at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's just like there's this book I read a while ago, and I got to revisit it because I sometimes I revisit really good books, but it's like um thinking who's it by? It's like thinking fast and then thinking slow. It's by Daniel Kahneman, I think
Oh
that's the
yeah.
book. I think that's the book. But he talks about it. It's like sometimes we have to learn to slow down to actually get faster. And like there are times where I'm in clinical dentistry or even like in business, and I'm like, if I just did this a little bit slower, I would have probably still ended up at the same result. It just would have been with a little bit more of an analytical like view on it, instead of just rushing through it. And it's like that's another big thing that like I think they don't teach us in dental school. Like I feel like in dental school it's like this great reset, and then they indoctrinate you like you said, and like go do it fast, do it this way, like this is the only way to do it. And then you go out in the real world, you take like courses and you meet people, and there's like just so many ways to like do dentistry, and it's just like, man, none of this actually makes sense, and like you got to actually sit back and reevaluate. But a lot of us are type A or type B like hybrids, I think, when we talk about that perspective of how we are as people. And um we just need to sit back sometimes and just like reassess how we are. And a lot of, I mean, I see it on Facebook and different groups, and so it's like, man, like some people just need to take a chill pill, and some people just need to be more expressive. Or I just feel like people in general, and maybe I'm again blanket statement, but I think if we took the time to reflect and figure out how to handle the various problems and be kinder to each other,
Mhm.
and work together, and not be against one another, I think we could make a very cohesive system where people would burn out less, be happier with their craft, and just do better by patients.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, and that being said, I'm not, by any means advocating for, saying that, hey, let's be lazy and let's not do the work. I think there's a big distinction in setting boundaries where, when you are at work, you're focused about work. When you're at home, you're focused at your home life. So setting boundaries is a good thing from the standpoint of, you can have that hustle culture. You can have where when you're at work, you're all about work, making sure that you have good systems in place. You're doing things to train your staff properly. You're doing things to train your patients even. I mean, you think about patients that might be used to canceling, and they know that there are no consequences for canceling and that kind of stuff. And then there are situations where the patients, knows that, okay, if I cancel, I'm not going to be able to go back to this practice and that kind of stuff. So I can't just cancel for really no valid reason and whatnot. So I think it's training is such a big thing, but also instilling that in your team, to allowing them to do more, allowing yourself to be proactive with some of these things, and having that hustle culture in the sense, like, if you have an opportunity to do same day treatment, do same day treatment. Like, if you have an opportunity to do that extra filling or crown because someone else canceled, or you didn't have somebody on the schedule, go ahead and do that. That is okay. Like, that's good stuff. I mean, that means that you're being productive with your time, you're doing the right thing, you're taking care of that patient, but you have that boundary, because once you're done with work, you're done with work. Now that boundary could be, if you're supposed to get done at work at 5, and you might say, hey, look, I have an option of doing that extra crown from 5 to 6, or I go home and I'm done. Now it depends. Like, maybe it's an emergency patient and you're gonna stay extra. That's totally fine. But if it's a treatment that's not emergent, and you can bring that patient back another day, bring that patient back another day. So I think, like, setting those boundaries is such a big thing. And I remember that, I have a friend who worked at a practice that just, the patient showed up at 6:45 and they close at 7, and he diagnose some treatment and the patient said, yes, I want to do that same day, like their practice culture was, let's do it the same day. And he wouldn't get home till sometimes 9:30 or so. Now that's, that's a back in the day, he might have not thought much about it, but now it's a different culture. Now it's just like one of those things where no, I don't want to sit there and work for extra 2 hours and spend that time away from my family. You're trying to set those boundaries and you let those patients know, this is how things work. And I think there are so many practices out there where they're just run by patients. They are
Hmm.
just let patients do whatever they want, or they're run by staff. They just let the staff do whatever they want, kind of stuff. So having boundaries, having systems in place allow you to do things the right way, be very successful, and know that your time is important, their time is important, everyone's time is valuable, and then you're doing things that is going to be beneficial in the long run. And I think that's what I mean by when you're at home, you're dedicated to that time with your family. When you're at work, you're dedicated to that time with your patients and your staff. And that's a big thing. And I don't think I was like that pre-COVID. Not that COVID changed a lot of things, but I think, and I'll say this, I think part of it is the longer you're in that practice, the longer you're practicing, the more appreciation you have for what your mind goes through, what your body goes through, what your really mental health and physical health goes through. And you just have a better appreciation of how you want to handle things today, how you want to handle things 5 years from now, because of all the experiences that you get to see from your past.
Yeah, absolutely. And like that boundaries thing, man, that's just not just practice. It's like you were saying, it's family, it's friends, extended family. Like I think that's the biggest thing is like just establishing what you will and what you won't do. And it's like at the end of the day, like you were saying, it's if it's not emergent treatment, that $1,000 crown, a $1,500 crown can wait till next day. Say like a patient cancels or it's a slow day. That's just production for tomorrow. Like at the end of the day, you diagnosed him, you can tell the patient, hey man, like listen, we're about to close. I respect my girls. They come in, but they've got families to go to. I got a family to go to. I'll just see you tomorrow. Like if I've got an opening, we'll just see you tomorrow. It's not a big deal. Like it's having those honest and raw conversations. Which I think that in dental school we have a tendency to prance around the truth, and I don't know why that is. Maybe it's because like professors scare us or whatever. But I think if we have those conversations, not only does our staff respect us because we respect their time, but the patient also understands that there are things that need to be done. Like there's an urgency to the matter, but that you can handle it with more focus the next day. That's
Yeah.
pretty much it.
And I think what kind of sucks these days though in some ways is that there is some level of where some people are just taking advantage of that. We kind of see that in sometimes I'll see that at the restaurants or in retail or just wherever that might be, where this expectation of, I hate to use the word entitlement, but basically like I don't have to work hard and the result's going to be the same. Well, I feel like when you're at work, you really have to give your all to that workplace for doing right thing. But we see that so much in customer service nowadays is that people are just not dedicated the way they used to be. And I'm not trying to generalize by any means. I think it's a select small group of people, but the reality is true. I mean, you see that a lot in customer service nowadays. I think luckily, obviously I feel extremely fortunate that I have a team of people that are, very much in when they're with patients, when they're with at the office. I mean, they're very much in. They take care of them with so much respect, with so much care. But then you go out there and you're trying to find that in every aspect of all these other businesses that you come in contact with, and you're like, wow, why are they not like the way you think they should be? And I think that's just the cold hard truth about some of the way things are done nowadays.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think you tied it up pretty well. So Sunny, real quick, you also besides dentistry, because you and I could probably talk practice dynamics and boundaries and all that all day. But you started dental investment group, and I remember when I saw it. It was like back in 2018. I was like D1, I think, or something when I saw it. But what gave you that idea, and like what spurred it, and makes you want to continue doing it? Like that's the biggest thing.
Yeah, so when I graduated from undergrad, I was a business major and I loved stocks and investing, just the whole concept of, being able to research stocks and be able to just talk about some of those things with your peers. It was just a cool little concept. And when I started dental school, a lot of it just didn't exist. Like I don't think many people really cared about it. And I think for the right reasons. I mean, you're in dental school, it's stressful and you're just trying to get through dental school, and you're trying to just make sure you have a job and you have a practice once you graduate. So when I graduated dental school, I was like, well, I want to start that back up. And, we would have like a little text chain with a few people. And then when Facebook groups started to become more and more popular, I think it was back in 2017 is when I started it. I was like, well, it'd be kind of cool to just connect with like-minded people to talk about investing. What are some of these other dentists doing? What are some of these other people doing for retirement planning, for investing in the stock market? I remember I opened my Roth IRA back when I was, I think, 19 or something like that. And I was like, oh, this is such a cool concept, but I feel like no one really knows about some of this stuff in dentistry. So let's just open up the conversation and talk to people and see what they think about it. So when I first really just opened up the group, it was like maybe a couple hundred people that I added from my friends list. And then slowly but surely it grew and grew and grew. And now I think there's 26,000 people in there.
Wow.
25,000 of them are dentists in there. So it was just kind of cool to see that group's grown so much over the years. But really the goal was I want to talk to like-minded people about investing. Dentistry, it's cool because you get to manage the business. You get to create beautiful smiles and take people out of pain. There's that clinical aspect, there's the practice management aspect, but then there wasn't really a whole lot of conversation happening about what are you doing with that residual income once you've paid down the expenses. And no one really talked about student loans. Like it was just one of those things. You graduated from dental school, this is your student loan balance, this is how much you're going to make, and then figure this out on your own kind of thing. But no one talked about strategies. No one really talked about how to invest properly. To this day, I mean, every week I get questions in my DMs about backdoor Roth IRA. I mean, and we've talked about it in the group. I mean, dozens and dozens of times. But I know there are people out there that need help. There are people out there that just haven't even made a single contribution to some of this stuff. So knowing that there are people out there that are looking for that kind of help, I just love talking to people about that and just connecting with people that have the same mindset.
Yeah. And I mean, it's like you and I were talking about before the podcast. It's like the financial conversation, we don't talk about it enough. And I think that's kind of a shame because, like, as business owners or future business owners, even as associates, money isn't everything, but it's a tool that allows us options. And those options allow us to spend time with family and things outside of dentistry. And I think that's something that like this current generation is starting to realize, but it's not yet a founding principle, I guess is like the best way to say it. But I think slowly the industry will go that way. But I think the more we talk about money and numbers and its importance and avoiding burnout and not just always chasing the numbers and making sure that you're comfortable first, I think those are more effective, honest and raw conversations rather than just, oh, I produced 250K or 400K or 375, or I've seen some wild numbers. I'm like, hey man, that's good for you. But the question then, my follow up question is, are you doing backbreaking work? How do you feel at the end of the week? Do you feel burnt out? Tell me more about your experience, not just the numbers. Numbers look cool, but what are you doing to get those numbers?
Yeah, and honestly, the other aspect of that, if you don't know how to manage money, you can make all the money in the world and you're just going to spend it and not really have much left at the end of the day. And I think and that balance has to be there.
Hmm.
You have to spend money now to enjoy life. You can't just save all the way through retirement and then realize now there's no health and you've got all the wealth but you don't know how to spend it because you're just spending all that money trying to get better. Now you're just spending all
Yeah.
that money at the doctor's offices and you're making them rich. So
Yeah.
it's just one of those things where you truly have to figure out what do you need in retirement, but what do you need now to take care of yourself. And that's not just
Absolutely.
eating healthy or exercising, including that includes like travel, being able to do things now that give you that just mental satisfaction to enjoy life. And there's a lot to it. I mean, I think I was reading something about how the number of people that don't cook at home much anymore and get food from outside or have meal services and all that kind of stuff. I mean, there has been an explosion in some of that stuff. And I get that part. I mean, I think you doing prep at home, making meals at home, it takes time, it takes effort, all that kind of stuff. If you can buy back some of your time by having those meal prep services and that's giving you back maybe, 6 hours a week or so. I mean, that's 6 extra hours that you didn't have before, but that costs some extra money to make that happen. So it's a give and take. Literally everything that you do is a give and take. So when you're trying to design your life, how you want to live life in your 20s, how you want to live that life in these 40s and so on and so forth, you're really trying to create this roadmap. Am I going to have enough in retirement? Because you also don't want to be in a situation where you're, 60 plus years old and now you're forced to work and make that money for retirement. You hopefully want to get to that point in your 50s where you say, okay, work is optional now. I really like doing what I'm doing and I've done a really good job, trying to save for retirement. So I'll be okay no matter what. And it just takes planning, but that planning, can't come later in life. I mean, it's never too late, which is true. But at the end of the day, the sooner you start with some of that stuff, it's just like when you think about your practice, we all talk about, these practices that are uber successful or consultants that will give you tips and tricks on how to run a good practice, a successful practice. It's all about systems, right? You have to be able to apply those kind of systems in your personal finance too, because those systems are what's going to get you to that next level, that next milestone. How you're going to pay off those loans? How do you get to that point where you're going from, a negative net worth to a positive net worth? That takes time, it takes effort, and that takes planning. When you know people, when you're networking with the right kind of people, they can help you get there. But I think at the end of the day, like 99% of that work has to be you, like has to come from you.
Yeah, absolutely. And like one thing I was also like noticing is that a lot of people like they're like it was the question you posed, and people were saying like I'm barely saving 5% or I haven't taken a vacation 6 years. And in my head I'm like, wait, something doesn't add up because you earn all this money and you're saving for retirement. You should spend it on yourself too. Yeah, you have kids and all that. Fine. Totally normal. But if there's a card that you want, or if you want to go travel to Europe or somewhere in like the United States, you should go do that when you have the health. Fine, you don't get to do a lot of that, but don't sacrifice your own enjoyment. Like, whatever your, I guess you could say this frame is tickle your fancy, whatever really tickles your fancy, essentially, go do that. Because if you don't, then when are you going to ever do it? Like for me, I love cars, right? I need to have a nice car. Why? I grew up liking nice cars. So I have a nice car. Does it definitely make it a little bit harder to pay back my loans? Like that extra payment that I'm making towards that car? Could I put that toward my loan? And would that be a more financially savvy decision? Absolutely. But when am I going to get that time again? Because then I got to worry about kids, house, practice. If I don't do it now, I won't ever get that opportunity again. And I'm only young once. But I didn't go crazy with it. I still went expensive, a little bit above budget, but I enjoy what I do. And every time I walk outside and go to work, I'm like, I earned it. You know what? And do I sometimes feel guilty? Absolutely. But I don't regret it, and I still travel and I do my things. And I just know that at some point I will pay off my loans and I'll be as aggressive as I can be, but it shouldn't consume my life, and dentistry shouldn't consume my life either. And I think that's the biggest thing. And it's again another hard conversation to have. Like enjoy it, do what you have to do for your family, but also don't forget yourself in the process, because when you forget about yourself, then you become miserable, then you hate dentistry, and then you don't want to do your best for your patients. So I think that's something that also needs to be touched on.
Yeah, no, that is so true. I think in general, dentistry can be, a stressful field, but I think that person can make it worse by their attitude, by the choices they make. But yeah, I think in general, you have a lot in your control, a lot more than you think.
Hmm.
And people just don't give themselves credit. People just need to know that you have to take care of yourself. Because if you don't take care of yourself, you really can't take care of others. Take care of your loved ones if you don't take care of yourself first.
Yeah. Absolutely. And like you were talking about like the whole cooking food thing and all that. Like Sunny, like on Sunday, well, I'm off tomorrow, so I'll do it tomorrow. But every Sunday, like my habit religiously is to prep food. Like, and I'll do 2 hours or 3 hours, about 3 hours. But that 3 hours, I eat the same meal for the next 4 days. And people are like, how do you do it? I'm like, because I make it tasty. Like that's it. Like I just spend the time and I look up recipes and I do it. And in that process, I save a ton of money. And there's some days where I'm like, "Ah, man, I don't want to eat this again." But you know what? I'm like, it still is really good, and I'm very grateful for it. But you're right. Like, do things that will make sense, and don't go out of your way to like just always go outside and buy food. Because, like, for example, that does cost a lot. If you look at the numbers, you're like, man, that is a lot. Like, I could save a ton of money by making my own food. It's like a 2 hour investment, 3 hours at most. And even then, like most of it, you could bake in an oven and you could just let it go and do something else. I mean, it's just about being intentional in your efforts. And I
Yeah.
think that's the biggest thing.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And I think everyone lives life differently. You should be able to live life on your terms, but you just have to, you can't be careless. You do have to do some planning. You have to take some steps to make it happen. But once you have good systems in place, there's really no reason why those systems can't, follow you and make you successful. And of course, I'll share this with you. Despite all of that, life can throw you curveballs that you never imagined. 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago, we weren't like necessarily even planning on having kids and thinking about kids and that kind of stuff. And my wife, when she had turned 40, she, just like they tell you, like, hey, go get your mammogram done, she did. And 6 months later, she was diagnosed with aggressive triple negative breast cancer, as aggressive as it gets. And it completely changed our lives forever. Like, it's not,
Yeah.
because once that kind of diagnosis happens, it really changes you forever. I mean, it's not like you're trying to say like, oh, I'm going to get through this treatment and then you move on and you forget about it. Like, it truly, that's just not the way it works when that kind of diagnosis happens. And I think that was like a big eye opener for me, because here we're thinking like, I've done all this planning, like I've done all this stuff to, say like, hey, I can say goodbye to dentistry from the clinical standpoint in my 40s. And I was like very proud of that. I was very much, looking forward to that. And when something like that happens, your perspective changes, because I didn't want to just, keep on working so hard and, get to that point where like, hey, I've got all this money, but then I don't have the person to spend it with. And I don't have that time to, spend my money with. And I think that was when you go through something like that, the last 18 months especially has been such an eye opener. You really start to kind of look at life as a gift, every single day. You look at life from the standpoint of like, I have that gratitude. I'm thankful for each day that we're given on this earth. You even just simple tasks like when you tell people like you have to do this, or you can reframe it and say you get to do this, because there are people that may not be able to do basic tasks that we're used to. I mean, just thinking about people that might end up with a disability and they might be able to cook completely normally before, or eat normally, or do things completely normally, or people that, just think of it, people with MS, right? I mean,
Hmm.
they could do things completely normally, and then all of a sudden life starts to change, and they can't. And now they can't do basic things like go to the bathroom, take a shower, eat. They have to rely on other people to make that happen for themselves, for them. And it just truly kind of makes you think that you get to do these things on the daily that we just take for granted. We just kind of think like normal, we get to do this, we get to, oh, I've got to go, I don't know, prep this crown or do these fillings, I have to go to work and that kind of stuff. But then reframing that from the standpoint of like, you get to do that, because it changes how you look at life. Because just because you get to do that dentistry, I mean, I know doctors who don't practice dentistry anymore because of a physical disability or a mental disability, and they loved dentistry. They were so passionate about seeing patients, seeing their staff, but they don't get to do that anymore because something changed with their health. So the things that we take for granted because we just think of it as like a norm, we just think that that's our daily, it can change in an instance. And for me, I used to think like, oh, if I did this, then here's the result financially, and now I can make everything else happen. But that's not the case. Like, that truly isn't the case. At the end of the day, you have a level of money that you need for basic expenses. But believe me, with the same footing though, I'm very thankful, because of the resources I had in place, I was able to, you know, get her the best treatment, be able to get anything that we needed to make the treatment as comfortable as possible. And I also know that wouldn't be possible if I didn't have those resources. So I think it's just a balance is probably the hardest thing to figure out in life. But when you start to appreciate literally anything and everything that's around you, you just have a better purpose. You just have a better way of getting through life, because now you feel like, I'm not just doing this for myself, but I'm doing it for my family, I'm doing it for others, and you just have a better appreciation of how things are in life.
Yeah. And thank you for sharing that. That's hard thing to like go through, Sunny. So I'm grateful for you, talking about that, because it kind of gives you a perspective. Like we were talking about like health is wealth, right? And like, sometimes when we're young and we're in school and so on and so forth, we assume A plus B equals C, but that's not how life operates. It could be A plus B equals Z, and you have no idea that's going to happen the next day. So it's all about being grateful and just, being happy with what you have, and you can always aim for more, but maybe that's also kind of the issue that like we have growing up in like a very capitalistic society in America. Like for example, you and I are from Southeast Asia, Pakistan and India respectively, right? There I mean, and I'm sure but there are people out there living on like 1,000 rupees, and for our listeners that don't know what that means, it's like $5, maybe less, and they're happy. They couldn't care. I mean, they have family, they may or may not have food to eat, and they have clean water, and they're the most happiest people on earth. But yet we have Mr. Joe Schmo who wants to afford a Maserati and has like 3, 4 dental practices and broken family and so much other things, but they're still not happy. But and I say that in the most, I would say, like facetious way, but it's relative to understanding that every day is a blessing and that be happy with what you have, aim for the best, and do right by people. And I think if you do that, you will come out ahead of 99% of people. And I can say that pretty confidently.
100%. No doubt there. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's different. But Sunny, so we've talked about life pretty well, but I want to touch on something because I don't know this part about you, but how do you stay mentally or physically fit? Like, let's talk about the body part of this podcast. Like, what do you do on a daily? Like, how, you've been through a lot and, you talk about it, but what do you do to kind of stay in shape, essentially?
Well, the physical part, I need to work on that.
Okay.
100%. Not even going to deny that. Yeah. And I think I used to be one of those people that would, at the end of the year, you try to set resolutions for the beginning. I was
Hmm.
like, that's all BS. I mean, that's all bit. None of that stuff works because, every day is a new day. You can start anytime. You don't have to wait till the end of the year or beginning of the year or whatever to start something. So, yes, the physical part, I 100% need to work on. And even mentally, I think, generally speaking, I mean, there's a lot that happens. Even with everything that was going on in the last couple of years with my wife, like there are days where you're like in a dark place and you're trying to figure out like, why me kind of thing. Like, and especially like why her, because she's the one that's going through it. I'm there for her. But at the end of the day, you try to ask those questions. And I think mentally that changes in perspective about knowing the despite all of this stuff, how fortunate we are. Like she was able to get through treatment, she was able to get through whatever was needed, and she's the one that had to go through a lot of that mental anguish and pain and surgery after surgery and that kind of stuff. As a matter of fact, she just had her fourth surgery on Thursday, this past Thursday, after in the last basically what 18, 19 months or so. And I just feel, lucky in so many different ways that okay, she was able to get through this stuff. She was able to get through, I mean, pretty very, very hard. Like I mean, a treatment that I would never wish on anyone in the sense that it really tries to break you down because week after week you're going to the hospital, week after week you're have a doctor's appointment and that kind of stuff. So it asks a lot of you. And I just look at the like what she's been able to get through gives me immense amount of strength and gratitude for, how I guess the word I'm looking for, like how easy we have it when we don't think about some of that stuff. And I think just being thankful and knowing that um every day is a gift is such a big thing. Now that we have a 7-month-old baby and he's completely changed our lives, and now I try to focus on how to make him a good human being, how to give him the values and time that he needs to make sure that he's making the right decisions, or just giving him really good life lessons that he can get out there and just do the right thing. When that becomes your focus, when you feel like you have a purpose to and when you're responsible for others, it just gives you better clarity on in life. And for me, I feel like that's been a big thing in the last 2 years.
Yeah. And that's dude, that's one of the hardest lessons of life. Like, and I think like, passing, and how can I say this? I think the biggest award or reward in life, and it's taken me about 30, well, let's say 20 years, because I'm only 31. In the last like 20 years, I've really reflected on a lot of stuff. And like I said, I love cars. So I was like, one day I'll have a Ferrari. And then like my dad, when like I had a conversation with my dad, my dad's like, you'll come to realize that all the things that you dream for, it's great, and I'm happy for you, but it won't matter. I look back and I'm like, "Damn, he was right." Because like, I don't care about that stuff as much. Like, "Hey, yeah, nice car is cool," but it doesn't really solidify a legacy or anything. Like, your children and passing around passing along wisdom and this knowledge and experience you have, whether they listen or not, I think that's the best thing, the most valuable thing you could do. Is passing, like you were saying, for your child in the future is like, I think that's the dream of any dad and mom. And it's like, what, that's kind of what I want to do too. It's like that materialistic aspect of wanting more and more and more is kind of like died down, and it's just like, well, what value can I bring to my future family? Like, that's more important. And I think that's a lesson that I think only with time and a lot of reflection and life happening to you or whatever, that's what kind of is the final conclusion.
Yeah, I think humans have a weird relationship with materialistic things, including myself, in the sense that you just said you like nice cars, I like nice cars. I actually had a post in the group about Herman Miller shares and that kind of stuff. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
this is a cool chair I want to get, but it's an expensive chair, right? But I'm kind of like, it's one of those things where there are certain things you buy for comfort, improving quality of life, that you're going to use it over and over. But there's certain things you're just like buying it just for the sake of buying it. And you're like, oh, I really want this kind of thing. And then you don't end up, using it again and for God knows how long kind of thing. But generally speaking, you're right. Like, I think we have such a weird relationship with materialistic things that even though we understand that in the end doesn't really matter, but we're still going to make those decisions. We're still going to end up buying some of those things, and that's okay. I mean, you're like, hey, maybe you buy this car and it gives you, you know, a little bit of enjoyment every day. Fine. If it you buy something and you just don't end up using it at all, then that's a decision that you have to live with. So I don't think, like, I don't know if it goes away, but I think what happens is you just start to focus more and more on things that truly matter. The experiences and whatnot. Now, like, if you have a choice of saying like, hey, I've got this $20,000 I want to spend on something. It could be a thing, it could be, some modifications for your car, whatever that might be, or it could be a really nice trip that you're going to take with your family and you're going to remember for a very long time. I mean, that trip has more value than
All
that
the things.
you're going to make in your car,
Yep.
but that's the decision that when you make those decisions, you have to kind of live with those decisions. And I think generally speaking, as we get older, we just value things from not so much materialistic, but experiences. Those experiences you remember. I know that when you take that trip with your family, you can talk about that trip for years. You can talk about that trip completely randomly 20 years from now, but no one's gonna care about some, Rolex or 911 that you 20 years ago. No one cares. Like, and same goes with, with work and that kind of stuff. On your deathbed, no one's going to sit there and say, like, oh, I remember prepping that extra crown on that Thursday evening because I had a patient cancel. Or no one gives a shit about that stuff, right? Like, no
No.
one said, oh, I remember, you know, just doing all this extra work, and I was able to make an extra, 100,000 that year. Like, no one's going to remember that stuff. But you might remember that, oh, I remember like closing the office down for 2 or 3 days because of that snowstorm, and we ended up doing this or that, and it was such a great time. Like, you might actually remember that, and you might actually talk about that. The
Hmm.
next time that storm of the century comes, and you might, oh God, remember like that storm from 2026, 10 years ago, and we took those days off, and we just went here, there, and we just enjoyed, and it was such a great time. You can talk about those things, and you're going to remember that. But no one's going to sit there and say like, oh yeah, like I really had to hustle and I still kept the office open and had to go in there, saw all these patients. It was such a great experience because patients were coming in, paying their bills. Like, no one gives a shit about that stuff.
Yeah.
So I think like looking at things from a different perspective, looking at things from just a different way can really change what kind of decisions you make in life.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And I think these are the conversations that we don't have. It's all about making memories. At the end of the day, like like materialism is a cool thing, like in the sense that we get the opportunity to do that in America.
Mhm.
But it doesn't necessarily add to your happiness. And I don't know, like this kind of funny because like I get really upset with people when they buy cars to just buy cars and they don't know a darn thing about it. Like, and this is very common in Pakistan. I'm sure it's the same with Indian the older uncles and stuff. They'll buy like a freaking Porsche or like a let's say a Ferrari, and I'm like, do you even know who like do you know what engine that is? Do you understand? Like, ah, no, I just bought it, because I could, and I'm just like, okay. And it drives me up a wall. And my parents are like, you calm down. Like, not everyone's a car guy like you. And I'm like, yeah, but like, where's the passion? Like, why? Like, if there's no purpose behind it, why are you doing it? And it's just like I've realized with time that it's just how some people are, and you can't change them, but like you do everything to change them. But like you can choose to spend what you want on. Like if it were, I guess you may be in the same sense. Like if I could take a trip like 20,000 to like Europe and spend time with my wife and like my future kids or whatever, I would do that 10 times over than buy a Ferrari or something. I love Ferrari and I love the cars, but same concept, right? It's just about choosing what you want in life, understanding the cost and the benefit of each decision you make, and know that hey, you made this decision, either you're going to live with it or you're going to enjoy the heck out of it. That's pretty much it.
Yeah. Although I will say, when you do that 0 to 60 with your kid, well, he or she might remember that.
Yeah, that's true.
So
And you're not wrong. It's funny you say that because we have a family friend down in North Carolina. He has an old 911. At that time, it was pretty brand new. He's kept it for like 25 years. And I still remember I was 8 years old and he was like, hey, jump in this car. Like, you can sit on my lap. I'll have you shift the gears. It was a manual. And I've never forgotten that experience. Like, I don't remember much. I just know it was a black car. I went really fast. And that's where my obsession with 911 started. He was like, I want this. Never got it yet, but maybe in the future. But you're absolutely right. Like, it's those little formative memories. And sometimes that's kind of what drives you up that, but you're
yeah,
absolutely correct.
yeah.
Absolutely. But it's just interesting. So Sunny, we've talked about, like the whole health and more craft and stuff. Now, my follow-up to you and the last part of this podcast is your roots. So I know that you grew up in India, but you came here and lived in Ohio, studied in Ohio. What was that like? I grew up in Pennsylvania, so I kind of have an idea, but did you have any struggles? What was it like culturally? Tell me all about that.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that's a little bit of the boring part because I came here when I was young, like super young, so I don't like necessarily remember. Like, I mean, I do remember, but you just know, like, when you were there, you're just like hyper focused on schools and all. When I came here, I felt like I was like taking all these classes that I already taken, so it was just kind of cool to get through like some of the stuff. Then you're like, oh, this stuff is pretty easy, and then you like start taking some of the harder stuff. But yeah,
Yeah.
culture, like it wasn't bad at all. Like, it just, you come here. I mean, obviously there are a lot more Indians now in this country than 30 plus years ago or so.
Hmm.
So I mean, that's changed a lot. I do remember, you go to the, like, as a kid, you go to the grocery store and some random like Indian person stops you at the grocery, are you Indian, and kind of thing. So, but yeah, that kind of stuff doesn't happen anymore because I feel like there are a lot of Indians at the grocery store nowadays. So,
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
yeah, yeah, so that part was kind of boring in the sense, like, there wasn't like really, there was a change, but it wasn't like this big drastic change because majority of my life, like, I grew up here, so I kind of just really know what I know from here. And it's been many, many years. Like, it's been a very long time since I've even gone back. I think, and that's something, I will say, like, in some ways, I'm like, I wish I had gone back more, just because I mean, not that like all the changes that have taken place there, some of the cultural shift and some of the technological shift, like, I want to be able to see a lot of that stuff. And then you just get so consumed by work and school and doing all of those things, and you just forget that, oh, I gotta, make a trip out there as well. But generally speaking, as a kid, I think one of the cool things that I did go through, which, I mean, I'm sure kids are still working these, nowadays, but I started working when I was 14, 15 years old, and I got a lot of experience in customer service. I got a lot of experience in just how to talk to people. I think that helped me because I kind of like argue about this stuff with family members. Should they have their kids work or not, as a teenager.
Hmm.
I'm in the camp of yes. Some of my family members think no, like, they got to focus on school, don't work, just let them be kids, kind of thing. And so I don't know. I don't know what the right answer is, but I feel like those early years when I was a teenager and having the opportunity to work did teach me a lot and allowed me to, set a culture for myself, knowing that, okay, hard work matters. And then as you get older, you're able to really kind of look back and say, okay, what pieces of that life, do I want to instill in my kid? What pieces of life, like, would I not like care for in my kid, and that kind of stuff, in the sense that, I do want them to enjoy their teenage years. I want them to enjoy life and that kind of stuff, but also be able to teach them values of hard work and how to be nice to people. I think, like, and it's such a loosely term, like how to be nice to people. But unfortunately, that's like a big deal nowadays. Like, people are just not very nice to each other. Like, to teaching your kids how to be good human beings is hard, like, because it's not just like, hey, go be nice. Like, you have to do things to make sure they understand the why behind it, make sure they understand like what truly matters and how to live life the right way. And I don't think anyone has a crystal ball on how to do all of this stuff, but I think as a person, you just have to keep trying, and you just have to make sure that you're doing the right thing so your kids see that in you. And then when your kids see that, they lead by example and they want to do the same thing. So if you're, a good person, you're treating people the right way, they're going to see that, and they're going to, try to copy you with that. Especially those younger years, like, in their when they're single digits and teenagers, like, they pick up on all of that stuff. So, and I think that's the hard part about, social media nowadays, is that we're so consumed by our phones and technology. Like, even though you don't want your kids to get into all of that stuff from the get-go, but sometimes the unfortunate truth is that our work requires us to be on that stuff, and it's just hard to get away with that stuff. And I think that's where my wife says having those boundaries is such an important tool. That means that when it's family time, it's family time. When it's work time, like, then you can be hyper focused on that. Teaching, yeah, like, I, as a new parent, like, I'm sure I'm going to make a gazillion mistakes, but and I have no idea how, what I'll have to do to learn from some of those mistakes. But I think you just take it day by day.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing is like my dad was the same, like very traditional, like you're not working, you're studying,
Hmm.
but one thing he did, maybe this is something that, maybe it's advice for you, but like whenever we did like work outside in the garden or whatever, like my dad would make us do menial tasks. At the end of the month, he'd be like, "Okay, what did you do? How much did you do? How much effort did you put into it?" And then he'd just give us like a small like token of appreciation, like $50 or like $20. I'm like, "Hey, that's your money, you keep it, you earned it." And, at the end of the day, there were times where it was like a delayed gratification type thing. It's like you wouldn't get paid right after the job, but and he would say like he had like a way of calculating it, but I like later asked him and I was like, "Dad, did you just like guess and like just whatever you paid like what you felt?" He's like, "Yeah." He's like, "There was no calculator." It's like just based on like, okay, how much did I make that like personally what he made? And he was just like, "I saw you do work." I was like, "And I think you deserve a little bit more here. Just here's some like extra money." That's it. And I think, like, I appreciated money because of that. I never really worked. I mean, I did, like, small business things on the side for fun, but, like,
Yeah,
never really worked. My dad was like, "No, just go study and just help me around the house," and that's kinda all we did.
yeah,
But it was kind of a it taught me the importance of money and how to save, and if I wanted something, I'd have to pay for it, and my dad would be like, "Okay, like, it's $100. Well, how much can you put towards it?" And it's like, "Okay, I'll put 75. Okay, I'll put 25, done." But, like, it's like understanding that concept of money and having the understanding of importance what money is, and I think that's the biggest thing, so I'm very grateful for that.
yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, and I think, like, in general, that kind of brings me to the next point, is that when you have the right education, when you have the right resources, even for this group, we talk a lot about how can you invest for your kids,
Hmm.
whether it's potentially hiring them as an employee of your practice, or having them do tasks where, as a small business owner, you have the ability to do some of that stuff. Like, people, obviously, in disclosure, this is no legal advice by any means, but just like, those are some of the things that come up in the group, and those are some of the things that we discuss, is how to really instill good values in your kids and setting them up for success. The tools you can give them early on can really help them in the long run, especially with, like, how expensive college is.
Hmm.
Not just forget the cost of dental school, but even just undergrad tuition is just out of control these days. And if you can set them up for that success from the early years, where they have enough saved up, and their undergrad or potentially even dental school can be a large part of that, can be taken care of, that's huge. But you have to take some of those steps now, because that compounding is truly a thing. Some people don't believe in it, but it truly does work.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So Sunny, I've got two final questions for you before we end. My first question is, when you die, what do you want written on your tombstone and why? And then my second question is, who is Sunny in one word?
That's a tough one, man. I think I just want to be remembered as, being a good person that, being a good husband, being a good father, um, just yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to say. I think I just want to be I just want to known that okay, if somebody needed help, he was there.
Hmm,
Yeah. So,
that's it.
yeah, I'm just trying to keep it simple. If somebody he was there and just yeah, just being a good husband and a good father and I feel like in many ways like I've got long ways to go to be both of those, but yeah, I feel like I'm learning things every day. And what was the second question?
And then who is Sunny in one word?
Oh man, that's another tough question. I don't know. That's I'm me. Like I'm
I
just
love it.
yeah, I just say what's on my mind and I'm me. Like I don't know how.
I love it. And sometimes it's the simplest answer is the best answer, and that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's pretty much it, man. Thank you for, sharing your journey and taking the time out of your day to, talk about this stuff. Because I think like honestly, like with all of my guests, when they first come on, they're just not sure what they're gonna talk about, what I'm gonna ask, and then they realize like this, you could talk about people for hours, and there's so much wisdom and pearls in everyone's journeys that like it's kind of why I do it. Like that's really it. It's not to get famous or not to for any of that. It's just a storybook that's digitized essentially, and people can just click on an episode and be like, well, maybe there's something cool I can talk about or learn from. That's pretty much it in a nutshell.
Yeah. And I think the one thing I want everyone to take away from this is don't be afraid to ask for help. I there are so many times where I'm just like not sure how to do this or that and I'll just pick up my phone, either call somebody or text somebody like, "Hey, how would you do this?" and just do that because there are plenty of people out there that are willing to help you and just, be there for you. Cruel as this world might seem at times, there are tons of good people out there. There are tons of people that really care about other people and never be afraid to lean in and ask for help. And I think sometimes I honestly think we underestimate the power of asking for help from our spouse. Like there are so many times where my wife has given me tips and tricks on how to handle a situation at work or with HR and just in general, like how to practice management, all those kind of things. And I'm like, oh, I didn't even think about that. And she was spot on, whether you're trying to hire somebody, fire somebody, or how to talk to someone about making them better. Because when you're at work, like a lot of people can have this tunnel vision of how you think things should be. You need that outside person to give you another set of eyes, another perspective on how they think things can be for you. So never be afraid to ask for help, but especially sometimes it just takes that one person close to you that knows you so well that they know, okay, I know you, I know your personality, I know how you do things. This is how I would handle things if I were you, kind of thing. And that's such a powerful thing. And I think we just don't give, our partners enough credit to make that happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Some good wise words from Sunny at the end. So I appreciate that, man. I think that's gonna sit with a lot of people well. So thank you for that. But yeah, that's pretty much it in a nutshell. I guess that's the end of our conversation. But hey, thank you again for coming on the show, talking about yourself and kind of talk about your journey and some wisdom that I picked up from it. So I really appreciate it. And for our viewers, thank you again for joining another episode of Mind, Body, and Roots. Until next time, my friends. Thank you.
Thank you.